I'm making this video to show you everything you need to know as a DIY to demo for your renovation. I want to start by giving you a new way to think of demo, not as breaking stuff down, but rather getting the space ready to build in. By the time you're finished demo, there should be nothing left in the way of building whatever project you want to work on. That means all the little tidy up bits of pulling nails or staples or scraping torn drywall or even scraping popcorn ceilings, all of that should be done before any rebuild begins. At this townhouse, I'm redoing just about everything, so I've made 6 sections for this video: carpet removal, kitchen demo, bathroom demo, fireplace extraction, trim pulling, and subfloor cleanup. The popcorn removal at the end is just some bonus content. Use the chapters to look for the parts that you're most interested in. I started with taking out the carpet, and that goes a lot easier when you pull the baseboard off first. You can remove carpet without pulling baseboard, but chances are if you're doing new floors, you're going to want new baseboards too. If you're going from carpet to any sort of solid surface, you'll have to replace the baseboards because they won't be at the proper height anymore. If you're removing painted baseboards, there will be some caulk at the top of the baseboard where it meets the wall, so be sure to cut that before pulling the board, or you risk damaging the drywall. I didn't have that concern here because my baseboards weren't painted, they were stain grade, and that means they don't have any caulk. Carpet comes out easier when you cut it into sections. You can cut as you go or cut a whole section at once. Sometimes I roll the underlay up with the carpet and sometimes I pull them separately. Most carpet is either glued down, like in my Bankview reno, or held with tack strips. Tack strips are thin pieces of wood with nails that go both down into the floor to hold it in place and also nails going up to grab the bottom of the carpet. I showed 2 ways to remove them. First, I went with my blue pry bar. Pry bars are good when you want more control or are trying to preserve one of the surfaces, like around walls or doors or trim. Later I used my larger wrecking bar, which is nice to have because it lets you stand while you're working and has more mass so you can use momentum to help remove things. One of the things you'll want to sort out is how to get the old material out to the garbage or the dump. Some people like to rent large bins like these, or a dumping trailer, or a regular trailer, or just throw it all in the back of their vehicle. If you're doing a bigger job like this, it can make sense to make piles before taking all the things all the way out. Try to make separate piles for the things that have very pokey and things that aren't. It'll save you hassle when you have to move them into your truck or bin later. Pulling carpet from stairs is a chore and only gets worse when it comes to the demo detailing, that is, the final pick and pull every nail and staple before the rebuilding begins. I did figure out a new way to deal with staples on stairs, and I hope it'll make your life a lot easier. Angle grinder. Not the fastest for large areas, but holy heck does it save a pile of time on stairs. Even with an angle grinder, stairs take a long time to clean up. Make sure you have something soft to kneel on, even if it's just an old scrap of carpet underlayment. For larger floor areas, there are a lot of ways to deal with staple removal. You can pick at them one at a time like I just did, you can hammer them in, or if your space is big enough, you can use a floor scraper. After you've knocked or pulled out all the old staples, I like to use a magnet broom to pick them up. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's a magnet as a broom. It picks up metal things, or at least metal things that can be picked up by magnets. This is where the get the space ready for rebuild really comes into play. If you're putting any solid surface floor down, like laminate, LVP, or hardwood, even the little old hammered down staples from 30 years ago can get in the way and cause you big headaches. So make sure the subfloor is cleaned, scraped, and ready to go before moving on. That's going to include a lot of vacuuming, which is both great and annoying because while you're vacuuming, you're going to find a lot of staples you missed the first time, as well as glue, lumps, drywall drips, and other things that will get in the way of an easy install for your new floors. Kitchen demos, probably what most of you are interested in here, either that or the bathroom. I usually go after the plumbing fairly early in a kitchen demo because I want to be able to get rid of the sink, dishwasher, and the countertops. That gives me more access to remove the base cabinets. For the plumbing, I usually only need a small set of channel locks to remove the sink and dishwasher hoses, and loosen any nuts holding the drain to the tailpiece. I make sure I have a cap for the plumbing drain so that when I cut off the old P-trap, I can keep the stank from coming up into the kitchen. Usually I have paper towels handy too, but I forgot them that day. Tiles like this will be caulked to the countertop, so make sure you cut that before trying to remove anything. Laminate countertops, if they have joints, will likely have hardware like this installed underneath. Beat them out with a hammer. then the counter should come out fairly easily. Dishwasher removal is also quite easy. You'll already have removed the plumbing attachments and all that's left is the electrical. This dishwasher unplugged. Yours might have a junction box at the bottom front of the dishwasher. Dishwashers are supposed to have their own circuit breaker, so once that's off, go ahead and do whatever you need to do to remove it. I find it a lot easier to find where the screws that hold the cabinets to the walls are, rather than trying to brute force things apart, and then later still having to remove those same screws. When I'm removing cabinets, I want to be able to stack up as many as possible into my van at once for a dump run, so I will fully disassemble, however energetically, every cabinet. These ones being metal required a little bit more effort than normal for that. Usually my disassembly will be a few swift whacks with a hammer at the joints, and they will typically fall apart pretty easily. The last thing I want to draw your attention to with cabinet demo is that removing base cabinets first makes pulling the uppers way easier. You're never stuck leaning over anything that way, and as you bring them down, you can be right underneath, and that makes them much easier to carry. Of course we have another screw here. Ew! Okay, that's kinda gross. The wall should not be sticky enough that you push the cabinet against it and it stays. A lot of older kitchens and bathrooms will have an additional layer of subfloor. People put these in because the linoleum they were going to install is very thin, and they wanted relatively even final floor heights between the carpet in the living room and the lino in the kitchen or bathroom. One very popular material for this additional subfloor height is K3 board, or as I like to call it, oatmeal board, because when you're pulling it up, it's chunky like oatmeal. K3 is usually both glued and stapled down, and you should count yourself very lucky if it comes up as easily as mine is here. In other renos, I have actually completely removed the entire subfloor, cutting it out with a skill saw, because it was actually easier that way than trying to separate the K3 from the underlying plywood. I have tried every tool I have in my arsenal to deal with this stuff more efficiently, and the best I've been able to come up with is a variety of pry bars and some of the larger channel locks for the staples. The hand wasp can do okay for some of the areas where the glue just isn't giving up, but overall, it is too slow to use on big areas. The floor scraper can do a little bit better than the hand wasp for the glue, but it does get absolutely stopped by the larger staples that they use. This here gives you some idea of how ridiculously stubborn this material can be when the application worked a little bit better. So why did I go through this effort to get all of this floor out and all the staples and all the glue? Well, that's an aesthetic choice. People in this town like continuous flooring, and I think it's very, very cheesy to put in transition strips because you were too lazy to take out a little bit of extra K3. You can see here why I disassemble my cabinets so much. I can get 3 cabinets stacked into the space of less than 1, and that saves me a lot of trips to the dump in the van. It also saves me a lot of trips down the stairs just to get the stuff to the van. It might be a little tough to tell because the GoPro is really bad at focusing close up, but whoever touched these outlets last used wood screws to fasten the outlets to the box, and that has definitely 1000% ruined the threads. So we get to take off all this drywall, and then all this drywall, at least like a big band through the middle, so that I can replace those boxes. Part of demolition is just creating access for things, whether that be replacing electrical, swapping copper for PEX, or moving a heat run. It's best to know if you want to do those things well ahead of time so you can do all of your demolition all at once. So while I might normally just repair the drywall there, because I had to replace those boxes, I really also wanted to take the opportunity to install some backing for the base cabinets. I want to see if it makes any difference in the overall kitchen install speed later on. You might want to do full drywall removal if you want to consider more outlets, under cabinet lighting, insulation replacement, vapor barrier repair, etc. On that note, is it actually just the most pretentious thing in the world for me to use a word like etc? Let me know in the place where everyone goes to tell YouTubers how they did everything wrong. Just don't be like me forgetting things like microwave or hood vent outlets. We got new boxes, and all the places that need new boxes. And we even managed to remove the dishwasher outlet because everything here gets hardwired, it doesn't get plugged in anymore. Here we go with another fireplace removal. If you have an old fireplace that's just a big waste of space, they're pretty easy to get rid of. Here's how I do it. Start with pulling off whatever tile or paneling or drywall is above and around the fireplace. Then you can see if the fireplace itself is attached to the framing, or if, like for both of the fireplaces I've removed, the framing is just built around it. That makes it really straightforward to cut the framing out. Then it's time to start with chimney removal. This can be harder or easier depending on how many floors you have, what your attic access is like, whether it's recessed in the wall, your local style of chimneys, etc. I've removed 2 chimneys, which by YouTube social media influencer rules makes me the world's foremost expert on chimney removal. Both the chimneys I removed were triple layered sheet metal chimneys with standoffs holding them at each floor. You can see my bank view fireplace removal video that shows how I completely removed that one, but for this one, since the sections of the chimney ended in the joist space between the floors and the standoff was holding them all securely, I opted to only remove the lowest sections. Whether or not you decide to take the chimney all the way out is up to you. You might want to reclaim the space through the upper floors that the chimney might be taking up that I just didn't care about. Fireplaces will usually have some kind of concrete in the bottom and on the sides, so removing that makes getting the fireplace out a lot easier. I also tend to tear down the fireplace itself a fair bit for the same reason. I think angle grinders are the most underrated home reno power tool in general, but they're an absolute necessity for Fireplace Demo. Just be careful where you send the sparks. Next is the master bathroom, the upstairs bathroom, the whatever bathroom. This has got to go. The only thing that's staying here actually is the toilet, and we're going to try to take care of this mirror because that might be able to go back up as well. Everything else is going to come out. So the first thing I'm going to do is get anything that might be in the way, like these, like this, like all of these, get those out. Then we'll work on the cabinet. Then we'll go to the shower. But also first the door. Oh, and then they use flatheads. Like this is why this is why I sometimes don't get super excited about doing demo, because like you could just come smashing at it, but then you got to repair the wall here. And repairing the wall because you tore huge chunks out of it is a very different thing from repairing the wall because you have a couple of holes in it. There we go. That worked for one. That worked. Drywall anchors, especially metal ones, can be a lot easier to just drill through than to try to pull out or to push in. These flat mirrors with no frames usually just have a couple of clips that will actually slide up on the top, and that lets you remove the mirror without any fuss. On an entirely unrelated note, for anyone installing anything ever, don't use drywall screws for anything but holding drywall to a wall. And don't use flathead screws if they're not going to be seen. Just please don't. With the plumbing, make sure to have a pair of channel locks handy, as well as a cap for the drain that you'll be removing. This sink didn't have shutoffs, so I had to go and get at the main for the entire townhouse. The plumber who installed these pipes was kind enough to put a couple of 90-degree elbows on to make sure that you wouldn't be able to remove this side of the cabinet without completely tearing it apart. You should absolutely expect to have to do some of this sort of stupidness to be able to continue your demo. We're done getting rid of all the junk on that side, so we gotta get rid of the junk on this side. And the way that I go about these is I'm gonna cut along here all the way through the drywall, all the way down. I want to get as big a chunk of wall and tile as I can carry out at once. It makes no sense to bust these off like I do in the kitchen or around the vanity individually one at a time. If I can get the whole thing off, I'll be very, very, very much faster, very much cleaner, and I get to show off how tough I am. So big chunk, maybe 2 chunks for each. This is definitely going to be 2 chunks, if not more, and then another chunk over there, maybe 2. Always remember to cut the caulk where the tile meets the tub. It is really not a lot of fun to have a 50-pound piece of drywall and tile that's hanging on just by some old caulk that doesn't want to give up the ghost. I like active dust collection when I'm cutting drywall, so I use a vacuum instead of a mask. You'll need to remove the shower controls before you can finish getting all of the walls fully off. These are usually pretty straightforward, held on with just some set screws or even some Phillips screws. Bathtub spouts often just unthread their way off. Whoever installed this fixture, subscribe to the 1 tube of caulk per fixture school of installation. To disconnect the bathtub from the drain, you'll want a tub tool. That's what it's called, a tub tool. Often before the tub can come out, you'll need to pull the drywall, screws, and nails, as there are likely some close enough to the tub that they'll block it from coming out. Toilet removal is pretty easy. Disconnect the supply line and remove the 2 nuts holding the base of the floor. If someone caulked it, you get to dig that out too. Make sure you flush it good. Also, you might want to plunger it a little bit if you have one handy. I didn't, so I had to empty the trap over a bucket. Should have done the toilet first so I could empty the trap into the tub. Then it's floor removal. More lino and some K3. Check back to the chapter on K3 removal if you skip the kitchen demo. I do a lot of cleaning as I go to make sure I can see where I need to work and still pull staples. I also wanted to remove the old copper plumbing, so I got a few shark bite caps. If you're going to use shark bites, be sure to prepare the pipe properly. That's a lot harder to say than you would think. Clean the outside and deburr the inside. The vanity that I took out of here went all the way to the floor and just had a vent in the toe kick. It didn't have anything decorative here, so I went and I got a boot, and I will take out this flange, I will take out this elbow, I'll put this boot in, and then it will be at least an option for me to make it a floating vanity. So here's me doing that. I did pull out some of my old sheet metal tools, they were pretty useful, but what saved me in the end, as always, was the angle grinder. Finally, any demo is going to require a big amount, so much nail and staple pulling, so be prepared for it. You can't install new doors, trim, baseboard, floor until all the old metal is removed. The best way I know how to do that is to take something with a flat metal end, like a nail puller or a hammer, and run it along every surface that you want to put anything new on. That metal edge will catch on any old metal that's still there, like nails or staples, and that will find things that your eyes are definitely going to miss. When I'm doing demo, one of the things I have to do is make sure that there's no staples or nails left in any of the trim, because demo isn't the wrecking process, demo is getting it ready to rebuild. So every time before I finish a spot, I will go with my tools and just run it along anywhere where I have to put new material, because my eyes will miss stuff, but my tool will catch on anything that's stuck there that has to come out. And if it does catch on stuff, like obviously I can see this one, but if I couldn't see it, my tool would let me know. You've probably noticed by now I'm doing a little bit of scraping and a little bit of vacuuming. There's 2 reasons for this. One, it lets me keep things clean and that helps me keep my head on straight a little bit better. And 2, it gives this water time to soak into the ceiling. And I've always been really bad about letting the water soak in fully. I kind of just spray it and then start scraping. But if you give it a few minutes to soak in, it comes off a lot easier. So I'm kind of really liking this with the spray and the clean alternating.